Hi, this is my Weihrauch HW97K spring rifle. I have had this unit since 2008, and as you can tell, it's still in a pretty good shape. This is mainly for two reasons. First of all, is that I look after it a lot. I clean it out after each use with some gun oil and a cloth, especially in the parts that are not really accessible under the cocking lever or where you put the pellet in the cylinder. Second reason is that this rifle started dieseling a few years ago. So what happens is oil or grease gets on the seal, on the piston seal, internal component, and every time you shoot, the rifle is smoky. At first you may think, well, this gives it a more realistic experience, but now the dieseling is no good for your seal, for the spring, and it undermines the performance. So the rifle started losing accuracy, even with the top quality pellets. And I just lost interest. If it was not reliable, what's the point? And only a few days ago, I got back to it and I thought, all right, let's tune it up with a V-Mach kit. You can get this kit in different powers. I chose the 16 joule version because I think it's the one that gives you the best balance between accuracy and power. This unit shoots 0.177 pellets, so they're small, half a gram. With 16 joules you've got more than enough to kill a pigeon at 50 meters, no problem. So I don't see the point why you need more. Another reason is that too much of a recoil can damage your scope. So I was trying to minimize that as well. The shot cycle of this gun is not soft. The scope I mount is a Nico Stirling Diamond 1050x60, pretty much the best you can get. This setup weighs a bit more than 5 kilos, so yeah, it is heavy. Although the balance is not bad once you get used to it. Once you find the comfortable position, the shooting experience is splendid. So without further ado, let's see how we install the kit on this rifle. First thing you'll need to do is disassemble it completely. So begin with the scope, obviously. Then you need to remove the stock. There's a couple of screws here, a couple more on the trigger guard. Afterwards you'll need to disassemble the cocking lever. It has a pin here. Then you can disassemble the trigger unit. It has 2 pins. You'll need to punch them off. And then you can disassemble the spring mechanism itself. These tuning kits are manufactured in the UK, although I bought mine from a German supplier. They cost about 120 euros. This might seem a lot. Definitely the materials in the kit are not worth that money, but what you're paying for is the know-how. Many years of trial and error with different seals, different materials and so on and so forth. So well, I think at the end it pays off. So this is the cylinder already degreased, and this is the piston. I've already removed the old seal from this one. This is the original spring and seal. You can see the face is quite dirty, and that was causing dieseling, which is no good. This is the new seal in comparison. So what I'm doing here is fitting the new seal. To do so I oil it a bit so it's a bit easier, and then I just force it in. And voila.
Now it's time to fit the supplied piston sleeve. It's basically a piece of metal, and I think what it does, it removes a bit the slack between the piston and the spring. The instructions say to fit it with the open section opposite to the slot in the piston. So that's what I'm doing here. The next step is to lightly apply grease to the piston slot and very sparingly on the piston body. The manual talks about a barely visible coat of grease. So that's what I'm doing here, applying it with my finger to have a better feeling on where the grease is needed. And make sure you apply no grease on the seal face, or you will cause dieseling, which may damage the seal, the spring, and will definitely cause a loss of precision on the rifle. This grease contains molybdenum disulfide, which is a very good lubricant. On a molecular structure, it works a bit like graphite, in which the layer of atoms can slide on top of each other. I am now applying some grease on the outside of the cylinder. Again, not too much. The next step is to assemble the piston back into the compression chamber, ensuring that no damage occurs when passing through the slotted section of the chamber. And then we can refit the whole thing into the action. The next step is to reassemble the cocking lever, the linkage, and the anti-bear trap. This way, not the opposite. Here I am using a punch and a nylon hammer to refit the linkage. Now I just finish it off with a punch. The next step is to fit two pre-compression washers on the inside of the piston. The kit comes with 5 or 6, but it explicitly tells you to only use 2 at the beginning. Adding more washers will not always equate to higher power levels and can upset the balance and overall performance of the tuning kit. It's time to apply grease behind the assembled units into the main body of the action. You also need to apply a bit of grease on the spring. And now we can fit it inside the action. It is now time to refit the rear block. To do so, you need to compress the spring and twist, but make sure you don't damage the thread. Take your time, just put your body weight on the unit. Now you need to make sure the rear block is correctly aligned with the rest of the action. This might be a bit tricky as it's very easy to over-tighten it. Now you can refit the large bolt retaining the anti-bear trap mechanism. You will need to extend the spring a bit, and this might be tricky. But make sure you don't damage the anti-bear trap itself, as you can pin it. The next step is to refit the trigger mechanism. But before, you need to install the safety catch and spring. This is probably the most difficult part, as it is not easy to align the trigger with the two pinholes. It is now time to mount the action in the stock, but first I make sure everything is nice and oiled. The grease on my fingers can corrode the metal, especially in the parts that are not exposed. The next steps are pretty much self-explanatory. Just make sure you tighten everything evenly.
So we're done. In a future video we'll see the accuracy of the rifle. But I think the operation went relatively smoothly. and it will give good results. Anyway, thank you for watching and I hope you found it useful.